Hello everybody, welcome back to the Young Fan Podcast. Welcome to another League One roundup on this Sunday morning. It's time we break down all of the action from yesterday in the division, looking at how the games panned out, looking at it from a tactical perspective, but also the key players as well. 4 games in some serious detail. But first, I want to have a little look at the general stats. What have we seen from all the sides so far on a really exciting website called The Analyst? I used it last season quite a lot. You seem to enjoy it, so I've gone back there. And I know it's only 3 games into the season, but already we're seeing some interesting patterns. I want to show you some of them first. Before we do all of that, please leave a like and subscribe. On the road now to 2.53, I think it is, subscribers. Either way, it's absolutely incredible. You are absolutely amazing people, and the growth of the podcast is only getting stronger. Please hit that like button. Can we get to a record 150 likes on a roundup? I don't think we've gone over 150 likes on a roundup on a Sunday morning. If we can do that, you're all amazing. It's so easy. Hit that like button, but also subscribe as well. That's completely easy. You'll get notified when I go live or do a recorded episode just like this one. That notification bell as well next that will notify you when I go live or do a recorded one. So very, very exciting times, and it's very, very helpful for you and very helpful for me as well. Thank you so much. We're on an absolute roll, and that's down to you. Right, let's get straight into it, starting off looking at The Analyst. So here we are then. This is The Analyst. This is a website that I used last season quite a lot. You seem to have enjoyed it. It basically is a massive database that gives us lots and a real variety of statistics in Sky Bet League One. It also does a lot of other leagues as well, but of course we're focusing on League One here. We'll start off with the expected goals table. You can see, and this is why I wanted to show you this, because there's some serious surprises. Cheltenham, who are 22nd in the league. I know it's only 3 games into the season, so of course there will be a massive amount of change. But I wanted to show you this early doors. 22nd in the league. Cheltenham Town, XG, they're topping it. Absolutely topping the XG table. 2.66 on their XG. Only 1 goal. They're not doing very well compared to their expected goals. And that's probably why they are where they are. Last year, Alfie May was a massive part of their success in staying in the division. Hasn't really hit the ground running just yet. I'm sure it will come. He's a clinical goal scorer. But being clinical last year was massive at Cheltenham. And if there's any... I think there is positives to come from Cheltenham. There is positives because it hasn't really been to the start of the season they would have wanted. However, they are creating chances. 14 shots. They're not actually topping the shots table. That's Wycombe, but they are topping the XG. They're creating some really, really good chances, but they've only scored 1 goal, and that'll be a concern. They can start taking those chances. They'd climb up the league table very, very quickly. Charlton are in second, but of course they are 5th in the league, 2.64. They're overdoing their XG, which is very, very good. They scored 3 goals with an XG of 2.64. So essentially, they are scoring more goals than they should be, which is a brilliant place to be. They're doing a very, very good job of being very, very clinical. They're not having as many chances as their goals are representing, but they won't be complaining. They've also got 20 shots in there as well, which sort of puts them around 7th, 8th in the league when it comes to shots. But their XG, they're doing a very, very good job. They're in second place and they're outdoing it, along with Accrington, who are outdoing theirs as well. Looking at the bottom end of the XG table, some more surprises. Now, I couldn't find last year's XG table, but MK Dons, Oxford United were very, very high up. Very, very high up. In fact, I think Oxford United finished the season at the top of the XG table. We create a lot of chances. We scored a lot of goals with the highest for goals scored as well. And I've been saying, I did a match reaction yesterday, and a lot of people were saying it was a little bit harsh, but I don't think I was very, very harsh when it comes to the fact that going forward, we look out of ideas. A different side going forward compared to last year. We do not look on it whatsoever. Our chance creation isn't there. The creativity is really, really lacking. And that was a big, big reason why I wasn't happy with the performance yesterday. On top of that, we lose the game 1-0 and don't play very well through the 90, I'd say. And even the 2 games prior to that, we didn't create much whatsoever. We won the second game of the season, a moment of brilliance. It was a brilliant, brilliant goal, brilliant feat, top corner. It's a wonder goal. That won't give you a very big XG because that isn't that isn't a good chance, really. That shouldn't be hitting the back of the net. It's a moment of brilliance. It's a moment of magic. That won't give you a very high XG. And clearly, looking at the XG table here, 14th in the league, Oxford United. That's wrong. We're not 14th. I think we're about 20th now. We've got 13 shots, 0.78 XG with 1 goal. We're less than a goal when it comes to XG. That'll be a concern. That'll be a big, big concern. Now, some of this I don't think is completely up to date. I think yesterday's might have not fully updated here because I can see Burton have got a 0.79 XG with 0 goals, even though they scored 4 goals yesterday. We'll come to that game in a little bit more detail in a second. So maybe this isn't taken into consideration yesterday's results. But even so, this is I think showing that sides that, were at the top end of it last year. MK Don's another example. Liam Manning, the style of play that he wants to play, he's so it's extreme football. It's attacking. It's free flowing. It's fluid. The chances are almost non-stop, and they're really, really low on this XG table. 0.65, 0 goals, and that hasn't changed. That doesn't really matter whether it takes into consideration yesterday's game. They still haven't scored a goal, and their XG is so low, and that surprises me. Liam Manning's gone from a back 3 to a back 4, and maybe that's where they're going wrong. We'll come on to their game in a minute, not in too much positivity with MK Dons. Of course, they lost to Ipswich, but that's one of the 4 games we're breaking down in just a second. But it's not like MK Dons. It's not like Oxford United either. But as for Cheltenham, you might be struggling with results. You are creating chances. You've got a very decent XG. You've just got to start taking those chances. Expected goals against, the team expected to concede the most amount of goals is actually Charlton, which is a little bit of a surprise. Is that right? Expected goals against? I think it is. 3.05. I was a little bit surprised by that. I mean, I'm now seeing Burton quite up there, so I'm not too surprised now. But actually, Charlton's defence this year, when it comes to, conceding shots and conceding good chances, it's fairly high. Now I know against Derby County they were a little bit under the cosh, particularly in that first half. That might be a bit of a reason why they are that high. They conceded 2 goals this season. Of course, Burton have conceded 5, but it's now 9 goals after yesterday's 4-4 draw. So they're going to be quite high on the XG table for against. So, yeah, these are the sides that should be conceding the most amount of goals. Some of them are doing worse than others. Burton are doing worse than their XG. Charlton have got 3, actually conceding 2. Peterborough have got about 3. They're actually conceding 1. So, yeah, a few surprises there. Wycombe, who normally are very shored up defensively, they sort of build their base off their back line, are actually up there. 3rd place with goals against, 2.4, with actually 3 goals conceded. We look at the bottom end, who are looking good defensively. Fleetwood are doing a good job at the back, along with Cambridge United, Shrewsbury Town, and actually Oxford United. And the reason why I think this is a really, really good way of showing things is because actually on the eye, watching Oxford, all of their games so far this season, going forward, we haven't been good enough. Defensively, we've been much improved. I think that's a really clear sign there. We're very, very low when it comes to XG against, which is, of course, very, very important. Goals for, though, we're really lacking. So, it swings and roundabouts. If we can bring that, attacking fruition of last year up the table, we're going to be in a much better position. But it's very, very important that creativity does come through. So, that's what I'm going to show here. That's non-penalty chances as well. So that doesn't include penalties for or against. That is something I wanted to show you. I've got loads of things we could sort of dissect here. Maybe I could do a dedicated video or dedicated episode just looking and going through these stats in a little bit more detail. If that's something you'd like to see, do let me know. Because like I said, there's so much we can talk about here. Some really, really interesting stats, some interesting figures, and this is called the analyse.com. Check it out for yourself. But if you want to see a dedicated video looking at it in more detail, because there's lots more we can look at. We've got team sequences, we've got pass sequences, passes per sequence, zones of control, which is something very, very new, very, very interesting. We've got team sequence pressures. We'd also can have a look at the individual player stats as well. If that's something you're interested in, do let me know in the comment section down below. Right, let's get into the individual games, because there's been some corkers in Sky Bet League One once again yesterday. Starting off with a bit of... No, we're not going to start off with a thriller. We're going to start off at Wycombe Wanderers. You could understand what I'm talking about when I say thriller. 8 goals in one game. That'll be after this one. Wycombe Wanderers against Shrewsbury Town is where I want to start, because I did see this result coming through. It was a late goal from Shrewsbury Town, and I said from the start of the season, Shrewsbury are my surprise package. They've done some really, really good business in the summer so far. They've brought in some really exciting attackers, if you like, but also some defenders as well. Shea Dunkley's come through the door. Shipley is also coming through that sort of midfield area. In fact, me trying to remember off the top of my head, I can actually show you the starting lineup here. Shea Dunkley starts, Tom Flanagan and Matthew Pennington, but Taylor Moore, I believe, is a new signing. Jordan Shipley is also a new player. So these are some really, really exciting new names in here, and they certainly have strengthened. And I've said from the start, they are my surprise package. They've let me down so far until yesterday. Looking at Wycombe Wanderers first, though, starting lineup you probably would expect. Mellor leading the line. Mahemeti, Horgan and McCleary, Lewis Wing and Josh Scowen. Joe Jacobson actually playing at left centre-back along with Freeney Joseph, which actually isn't really what I'd expect. I believe Tafazoli, is he injured or something? I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Maybe Tafazoli was injured. Let me know, Wycombe Wanderers fans, in the comment section down below. But yeah, that is the starting lineup for Wycombe Wanderers. Jordan Obita left back, Jack Grimmer right back. Looking at how the game pans out, looking at the momentum graph, you can see here Shrewsbury started the game sort of just about on top, no one really getting hold of it for sort of 5 minutes. Then Wycombe took ultimate control. We know that possession stats, we'll come on to them in just a second when we talk about Wycombe. They don't really like having the ball, and if they do, they don't feel like they need to have it. They can win games and look in control without having the majority of the ball. They play very direct. No goals, though, in that first half. And when Wycombe did have control of the game, they didn't really make the most of it. And if they had, this game could have gone completely in a different direction. That first half was all Wycombe Wanderers, other than the sort of first 5 minutes and last 5 minutes. Other than that, though, I mean, Wycombe didn't take their chances. When they did have dominance, they couldn't make the most of it. Going into the second half, it was starting off with a bit of Shrewsbury play, but then Wycombe grew into the game a much better pace, and they actually scored the goal. So they did have dominance in the first half. They couldn't take it. They did have dominance in the second half. They did take it, and they go 1-0 up. But really, against the run of play, you'd say, when Wycombe were in total control, Shrewsbury then hit back for an equaliser. And it is, of course, Matthew Pennington to make it 1-1 on the hour mark. So, and you can look at the graph here. The goal literally comes from nothing. There's no blue graph. There's no real look of attack from Shrewsbury. Wycombe look to be in control, and they're pegged back pretty, 9 minutes later. That's pretty quickly. We look at how the game then sort of took control after that equalising goal. Very, very even sort of chance for either side. So also have Shrewsbury sort of had a little bit more of play, and then Wycombe had a little bit as well. But in the 89th minute, Luke Leahy from the penalty spot makes it 2-1. It's a foul. The penalty's given, and in the 89th minute, Shrewsbury win the game and take the lead. Ultimately, does win them the game. So, fair play to Shrewsbury. They got the job done in the end. Wycombe probably felt a little bit hard done by. You look at how the game generally looks on the graph here. It does look very, very Wycombe Wanderers, and they did have the majority of the attack in play. However, also something to take a look at, Wycombe having a lot of possession, 65% possession for Wycombe Wanderers. We spoke about how they don't really have the ball a lot of the time, but in this game they did take control. 18 shots, 9 on target. We'll have a look at the big chances. No big chances, it's saying here. I don't really know if we can read into that too much. I know a lot of people have got their Sova scores sort of big chances calculation a little bit off a lot of the time. Shrewsbury have 2. I think one's probably the penalty. So, yeah, I wouldn't sort of take much notice of big chances. But looking at the shots, 18-6, 9-2 with on target, and a domination when it comes to possession. And this is a Wycombe Wanderers side who don't normally like having the ball under Gareth Ainsworth. That's really interesting. But, yeah, Wycombe probably feel a little bit hard done by with this one. Doesn't look like it's a completely dominant Shrewsbury win. But either way, they've got the job done. They win the game 2-1, and that's a brilliant, brilliant result because that does put them in a much more healthy position. They draw the first game of the season. They lose the next one. Things aren't looking exciting, and then a win against Wycombe Wanderers, and things can change. As for Wycombe, that's back-to-back defeats for them. Of course, a defeat to Bolton 3-0 last weekend, and a home defeat to Shrewsbury this weekend for Gareth Ainsworth and Wycombe Wanderers. It's not going brilliantly well. It's not going brilliantly well at the moment. 5 goals conceded, 4 goals scored, 3 points, 18th in the league, but very, very early days. Right, let's move on to the next one. I will take a look at the thriller next. I sort of spoiled it a little bit by saying that I was going to speak about it now, sort of taking the suspense away from it just a little bit. But we can all see this is an absolute corker. This is just action you get in 4-4. You don't get this in the Premier League. You don't get this in so many of the top divisions. League One, 4-4. It's a Sunday League score. Defensively, absolutely shambolic. In fact, look at the average ratings of the defenders here. The goalkeeper, 5.9, 5.9, 5.9, 6.4, 6.8. It's not actually that bad for a side that conceded 4 goals. As for Burton, 6.1, 6, 5.8, 6.8 and 6.1. And then a player as well who got a 9.2 rating. And, of course, Sean McConville. That's the key players we'll take a look at in just a second. First and foremost, though, looking at the two sides individually going into this game, Burton, they've struggled. They really, really have struggled. They've conceded a lot of goals. They're shipping goals left, right and centre. 11 goals conceded in 3 games. 11 goals conceded in 3 games. That's not a brilliant defensive record. And Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, he won't be too pleased about that. 3 games into the season, shipping that amount of goals is a concern. And if you're not scoring as many goals, you're going to be at the bottom end of the table. To be fair, even if you concede 11 goals, even if you're conceding a lot of goals, that's still a concern. It really, really is. 1 point from 3. They did draw this one, of course, 4-4. But before that, though, they were shipping goals and they weren't scoring many whatsoever. In fact, this is the first game in which they've scored a goal. They ended up scoring 4, but Before that, they were getting heavily beaten. 3-0 on the opening day against Wycombe Wanderers, then 4-0 against Bristol Rovers at home last weekend. It wasn't looking brilliant, but they have got the first point on the table, and it was against Accrington yesterday, and it was a thriller, like I said. Accrington, though, 2 draws and a win. They came into this game with a win. 5 points now, 11th in the league. Once again, hovering around sort of that middle park. I mean, to be fair, they're only 1 point away from the playoffs. And, they're 2 points away from top spot. But you can see what Accrington are going to try and do again. They're they can score goals as well. This was Accrington. This is an Accrington side that, under Joel Coleman, they just are such a fascinating team. They're fascinating. They're a banana skin for these top sides, but even sides like Burton. I mean, the comeback, we'll come on to the game. Let's come on to the game because it was just fascinating. The comeback that Accrington went on again today was just a different level of resilience, and I want to sort of break it down in a little bit more detail. Right then, it's time we have a look at how the game panned out looking at the graph. It's all over the shop. It's so bizarre to look at. I mean, sides having dominant spells. There's a lot of goals, as you can see, in an 8-goal thriller. But having a little look at what we can see, sort of how the game really went. 10 minutes into the game, 1-0 to Burton. 17 minutes into the game, 2-0 Burton. Davis Kelly done at the double. He had a brilliant game. We'll come on to him in a little bit more detail in just a second. He ended up getting a hat-trick. But like I say, we'll come on to that in a moment's time. 2-0 at half-time. The away side are winning the game. I mean, Accrington did have a moment of sort of dominance in the middle of that first half, but nothing really to shout and scream about. They didn't really take that sort of moment of dominance with any sort of grip and any sort of grasp. And we talk about it all the time. When you have dominant spells in football, especially in League One, where there's sort of unpredictable nature everywhere, as you can see here, you've got to take those chances. You've got to take those moments, and they didn't. Half-time, they're 2-0 down, the home side 2-0 down in Accrington, and Burton, who have been awful so far this season, are winning the game. They conceded 2 goals. They must be thinking, how on earth are we doing this? It's absolutely, what's happening? Clearly there's been a reaction. 2-0 down, Accrington at half-time. They come out, and they actually don't come out firing, because it's 3-0. 3-0, and it's Davis Kelly done for his hat-trick to make it 3-0 in the 50th minute, and then the tides turn. Accrington, they realise they're 3-0 down. I think they've only just realised it, and they go, we need to come back with something a little bit special here. And the resilience of this John Coleman side is something to be so proud of as an Accrington Stanley player, supporter, coaching staff member, because they were incredible. 3-1, Joe Pritchard. 3-2, Sean McConville, somebody who just keeps doing it in Sky Bet League One. He's incredible. 34 years of age. He's so influential on that left-hand side. His creativity is something to behold. And I mean, once again, he's such a massive part of it. He's the skipper as well, leading by example, leading through performance, you'd say. He's doing a brilliant job. 2 substitutes for Burton, then 4-2 in the 80th minute. Surely that's game over. Surely that is the point where Burton go, yes, we've been bad for the first 2 games of the season. Yes, we've shipped 11 goals after this game, but surely this is enough. 4-2, it's game over. Absolutely not. The late show at Accrington continues. They did it against Charlton. You can't sleep on Accrington. Do not think that Accrington won't punish you in the late moments. In the late stages, Accrington are just incredible. 90th minute, Josh Woods makes it 4-3, and then Josh Woods assists a goal in the 6th minute of injury time to make it 4-4. Incredible. John Coleman's side, marvellous. 4-4, and Burton will be gutted about that because, like I say, they're conceding 11 goals now. This is the first game they've actually scored a goal. They've been awful the first 2 games of the season. They finally are 3-0 up in a game, and they throw it away. And this will feel like a defeat for Burton again. It is a point. It's their first point, but it's still not brilliant considering they're 3-0 up at a point in the game, especially in the 50th minute. You're 4-2 up in the 81st minute. It's not good enough. Game management is poor in this one. And, that was something that Jimmy Floyd Hasselbaink will have to look at because, like I say, the game management, seeing out a game, being defensively, I think the confidence, the heads just dropped. They look like a side that can't win a game of football. They look like a side that can't win a game of football because they're so used to being, beaten ultimately in the first 2 games of the season. And you sort of 4-2, and then at 4-3, the panic stations kick in. I think there's sort of, it must be lights, it must be just, what's the saying? I've completely forgotten the saying. It's deer in the headlights, that's it. They must be thinking, I don't know what to do in this situation. And that must be horrific from a manager, but also from a player as well. But Burton, if there's any consolation, they were 3-0 up, and a big man of somebody who was 3-0 up, and a big part of that was Davis Kelly-Dunn. 90 minutes he played, a 9.2 rating on SofaScore, 3 goals, a hat-trick, 5 key passes as well. And we've already spoken about the key man for Accrington. But to be fair, Josh Woods, who came on, had a brilliant game, 8.1. He, of course, got a goal and an assist, a very important goal and a very important assist. And, of course, Sean McConville as well, 8.4 rating with a goal. That is the game here, a thriller, 8-goal thriller in Sky Bet League One. 4-4 it finishes at Accrington Stanley against Burton Albion. I mean, absolutely crazy stuff. Right, let's move on to the next one. So Ipswich Town versus MK Dons is where we go next. And for MK Dons, it's another defeat. 3 defeats on the trot. The first 3 games of the season have all ended in losses and no goals scored yet as well. Not a good start for Liam Manning and his side in the 2022-23 campaign. As for Ipswich, well, they're top of the league on 7 points. They drew their first game of the season, but since then have gone strength to strength and won their last 2. 2 goals conceded, but 6 goals scored. Like I say, 2 wins, a draw and 0 losses. Season top of the table after 3 games, joint top, I should say, with Sheffield Wednesday. Only goal difference keeping them at top spot. As for MK Dons, 24th in the league, rock bottom versus top in this one. 3 defeats on the bounce, 0 points, no goals scored as well, which should be a real concern, and 5 goals conceded. 0 goals scored for a Liam Manning side is rare, especially when you look at last season. They play with such fluidity. They go forward. They look extreme. We spoke about it right at the start of this episode when we look at the general stats. They played last year with such freedom going forward. The 3 at the back was something that worked so well for them. They lost Scott Twine. They lost Harry Darling. A lot of people thought that maybe the young players that can come in, they did reinvest with the money they got for Scott Twine and Harry Darling. Could they reinvest that? They did reinvest it. They brought in some young players that can sort of almost grow into the importance of those 2 players and really bolster their squad in the long term. Look at the long-term vision, which is very important. I think we're seeing a little bit of... No, I won't say second season syndrome. I don't think it's that. I think it's more a bit of a... I think there's a bit of confusion. There's a bit of confusion. I think there's a little bit of, I want to say, football jet lag. Last year was so good. I feel like they had some really important players. And I think they are sort of still dealing with the fact that there's some 2 key players there. I mean, Scott Twine in particular, he was somebody that it was a record amount of goal contributions in League One last year. He ripped it apart. He dominated the league going forward. He was good from dead balls. He was good in all sides of the game, scoring goals, but also creating chances himself. He was phenomenal. I think we are seeing a little bit of, I'm going to create my own sort of analysis term here, but it is a bit of football jet lag. It's almost as though they're still dealing with the fact that these players have gone, and they're just trying to sort of continue with the analogy I'm going down. I think just sort of get used to something a little bit different, to almost having to put their body. You know, if we continue with the jet lag one, we're going to have to keep going now. I've got myself in a hole. We're going to have to continue it. Sort of get that body clock back to where they know they can be. And it's going to take time. It's going to take a little bit of, you know, it might take an entire season. If these young players are going to have to grow and take a little bit more time, it might take a whole season. As long as they don't get relegated, you know, they might have to take a bit of a mid-table hit and then go again next year. Allow these players to develop, add a little bit of... Because they're going to have to gel as well. There's not a lot of new faces. So it's going to be interesting. For MK Dons, it's not good enough. And they start the season really poorly. Not scoring a goal in there as well, like I say, is very rare for an attacking-based Liam Manning side. As for Ipswich Town, like I said, they're doing a very good job. A lot of people, of course, were very, I think, excited about Ipswich this season. When you look at the players that they've brought in, they continue to bring in some really quite fantastic players for this league. Leif Davis is coming on a permanent deal from Leeds United. Marcus Harness has come in from Portsmouth. They're taking players off teams in the Premier League and the Championship on permanent deals, and they're also signing players that are amazing in League One for also almost playoff rivals, if you like, in Portsmouth for Marcus Harness. So it's an incredible pickup. And Freddie Ladapo as well as a free transfer from Rotherham, who did a brilliant good job of getting out of League One last year. You look at their squad, you look at their starting lineup, no wonder they're doing a brilliant job. And of course, Kieran McKenna's come in. He's really, I want to say, sorted them out defensively first and foremost, but now looking to build on that. And he's almost gone, right, defence is almost not 100% sorted, but I think the defence is now looking much better. Now can we build on different attacking patterns of play? Can we end up scoring more goals? Can we be a bit more deadly in different ways on the offence? I think we're already seeing that Kieran McKenna is doing that. That back three looks heavily steady now with Edmondson, Wolfenden and Donachin. They look a brilliant back three. That looks to be the best back three they've got, and you can see why. They're so comfortable together. Walton behind them as well is a very good goalkeeper. You look at the players, the system, it's very clear. There's the three at the back with the wing backs. Wes Burns on that right-hand side is so deadly. You look at Leif Davis, who we've just spoken about on the left-hand side, is a phenomenal young talent who's already proven to be a brilliant left-back. Lee Evans and Sam Morsey, the midfielder, played quite a lot last year and only seems to be getting better this year. Marcus Harness and Connor Chaplin's almost playing as sort of wide attacking midfielders that can play also quite narrow and also spread the play. You've got Freddie Ladapo leading the line. You've already spoken about somebody who scored a lot of goals in League One last year and over the years spent quite a lot of time at Rotherham but also other clubs in the Championship and in League One. Didn't get a goal yesterday, but of course did play a part in sort of holding up the play, if you like. And he also can play off the shoulders of defenders. He can get in behind as well. He's very unique in the way that he's almost a complete forward in that sense. So they're doing a really good job, and a lot of Ipswich fans were a little bit cautious again because I think predicting Ipswich to do well over recent years is a little bit dangerous. But I think this seems like I don't want to jinx it for Ipswich fans, but this does seem like a bit of a new Ipswich. This seems a little bit of a reinvented side, and that'll be exciting. Look at how the game panned out. First half, pretty much all Ipswich. They went 2-0 up in the first half. MK Dons had a bit of a moment on the sort of 20-minute mark, but other than that, Ipswich started strong. They're winning the game within the first 5 minutes. Wes Burns, we've just spoken about, scores in the 28th minute. Marcus Harner scores as well. Half time, 2-0 up, and MK Dons, well, they looked dominating that first half. It was all Town. You go into the second half, a little bit more even, but to be honest, MK Dons had minor moments, but generally Ipswich were dominant. They make it 3-0, game over in the 60th minute, and Connor Chaplin, like I say, wraps up the game. And it finishes 3-0 in the end as well. No more goals for the remaining 95 minutes of the game. So, 35 minutes of the game, I should say. So look, they've done very well in this one, and of course you look at last year how good MK Dons were. I think this is a bit of mix of a lot of things. Like Ipswich are much improved, but MK Dons are not the same side as they were last year. I don't think the four at the back is working. I think they've got to go back to the three. I don't think Dean Lewington, bless him, he's an absolutely veteran player when it comes to MK Dons, but as a left back, I think he got exposed yesterday. As a back three, he can get away with it. He can get away in a back three. He's got the wing backs. He's got two other centre backs that can get much closer to him because they've also got a right wing back as well. But in a back four with him as a left back, I just don't know if he has that at the moment. I say at the moment, but he is getting on now. He is getting on. I don't know if that's going to work. I just don't. And as the captain, I don't expect him to be dropped. But in a back three, it worked fine last year. But in a back four, he seems to be getting exposed. But saying that, the other wing back as well didn't do a very good job. The fullback, I should say. Sorry. Yeah, it's growing pains. Growing pains is MK Dons at the moment. A lot of young new players, and again, it's going to take time for them to gel. And look, 3 games in the season without a point, without a goal, it is concerning. But Liam Manning is a top manager, and last year he proved that he really can do it in this league. But looking at of today, as you can see, the average age of squads 26-24. They did have experience in that MK Don side. You take Dean Lewington out of it, though, that average age is probably going down to about 20. So it is a young side. It's a young squad as well. So there's a lot of work to be done. Let's see what happens. But Ipswich very dominant. Certainly deserve to win the game, and a very good all-round performance on a team basis, but also on an individual basis as well. Right then, let's move on to the final game we're going to be talking about in this one. By the way, I had to be really harsh with the games I wasn't sort of going to go into detail about. Could have easily gone into detail about Cheltenham against Pompey. Portsmouth, very dominant, very in control, comfortable. 2-0 win for them as well, getting back to winning ways after a draw against Lincoln City. Very good midweek win against Cardiff City as well. So, yeah, they're winning games in League One now. First win of the season. They're looking in a very good shape now. I think Danny Cowley is after really, I think, building on a winning mentality that he needs to install as quickly as possible, and he now is doing such a thing. We've already spoken about that. Cambridge United against Exeter City. By the way, I'm going to put this right at the start of this episode. So if you're watching this now, then you're going to be reminded of it again. But this is actually a tweet. I think it was a comment. It was a comment of my predictions from last week. I'll put it back on the screen again now. Or if I haven't put this on the screen now, I'll put it right at the start so you can see it then. But somebody's done an amazing job of calculating how well I did with my predictions. So that's really interesting. Cambridge United against Exeter City. 3-0 there as well. We're going to come back to Sheffield Wednesday against Charlton. I do want to chat about that. Plymouth beating Peterborough 2-0 is brilliant. Peterborough 100% winning start is now over. Lincoln City versus Forest Green is 1-1. Derby beat Barnsley 2-1 as well. Two newly relegated sides in League One going head to head, and Derby winning the game Port Vale versus Bolton Wanderers finishes 0-0, and Morecambe against Fleetwood is 1-1. Right then, let's go to the final game we're going to be delving deep into. Sheffield Wednesday against Charlton Athletic. So Sheffield Wednesday against Charlton then, a really interesting one to break down here. First half, very, very Charlton. In fact, I think Charlton probably were the better side when you look at the 90 minutes, but a side like Sheffield Wednesday, if you don't take your chances, if you don't make the most of being dominant, you're going to get punished. And Sheffield Wednesday did that to perfection today. First half, they weren't brilliant, and Charlton were much better than them. They had much more control going forward. They had a spell sort of at the end of the first half, and then Charlton then came back right as the half-time whistle was blown, but it was 0-0, and Charlton didn't make the most of having dominant spells. I'm going to say this the whole season, so if you're fed up with me saying it now, I can only apologise. It's only going to continue. In a side, in a league, in League One, where there's so much quality on an individual basis, but also on a team basis as well, against Sheffield Wednesday at Hillsborough, when you have your dominant moments, to take your chances, and you've got to be ruthless, you've got to be clinical, and they weren't, because they had some very, very big moments in that first half and they weren't able to make the most of it. You go into the second half, it starts off very, very even, then Sheffield Wednesday get a grip around the 60th minute until about the 80th minute, and in the 80th minute they score the goal to make it 1-0, and it'll be heartbreak for Charlton. They will feel hard done by, and I can understand why they will feel hard done by, because they probably were the better side, but they weren't clinical enough, and they didn't take their chances. It wasn't a brilliant Sheffield Wednesday performance whatsoever. Probably one of their worst of the season so far. But they got the win. They got the win against the Charlton side, who've been doing well this season. Put in a brilliant performance against Derby last week, and wanted to sort of improve on that. It's been a tough start for them, Charlton. Accrington away is a real banana skin. I think they were sort of banana skinned in that one with a late goal. And Derby, of course, they did a brilliant job against a quality side there. Then away to Sheffield Wednesday, that's not easy, and they were good there as well. There's a clear performance improvement. Last season they were dreadful, and this season under Ben Garner there's much more positivity around the football club, but it is a draw, a win and a loss. It is very balanced, if you like, inconsistent in their consistency, but there is a performance improvement, and that'll be really important to look at. When you look at the general stats of the game, it was Charlton that dominated. 55% possession, 11-7 when it comes to shots, 3-2 when it goes with shots on target. Both sides even on big chances. You look at how the starting lineups have gone. Ben Garner, very consistent with his 4-3-3. Clearly, his favoured back four is as follows: Sessignon, O'Connell, Innes and Sean Clare, with Joseph Woodacott as the goalkeeper. That three as well, of Morgan, Dobson and Fraser, looks to be quite a consistent three. Of course, Conor McGrandles came into the side last week, but of course it has moved out now. I think it was an injury that sort of caused him to be substituted in that game. I don't believe he was on the bench. He came on in the 82nd minute. I believe he came off quite early last week, and that's the three they've gone with. And then that front three of Charlie Kirk off the left, Jaden Stockley through the middle, and then Corey Blackett-Taylor off the right. They've just signed Raksaki, I believe, from Crystal Palace on a loan deal as well. So another loan player from a Premier League club with real excitement. Did brilliantly well in the reserve under 23s season last year. The Crystal Palace starman just on a long-term deal at the Premier League club as well. So, of course, there's a lot of excitement around him. They got depth in those wide areas. Clearly likes to play with wingers, likes to play with the high press, like he said when he was appointed. And like I say, they might not get the result they would have wanted today, and they did look the better side, but didn't take their chances, and that was something they'll be kicking themselves about. As for Sheffield Wednesday, wasn't a brilliant performance. It was okay. It wasn't awful. They got the win, though, and that's the most important thing. Sometimes the best teams, you win when you're not performing at your best, and I think Sheffield Wednesday are quite a clear example of that today. It finishes Sheffield Wednesday 1, Charlton Athletic 1, and that is the end of this roundup on a Sunday morning. Hopefully you enjoy it. I've been Jack, and this has been the Unfan Podcast. Join the Discord server for all the League One chat and also all of the phone-ins we're going to be doing. You can find that all in the link in the description. You can join the Discord server, leave a like and subscribe, hit that like button as well, and I'll see you all very, very soon. Instagram at the Unfan Podcast on there as well. Lots of inside stuff on that. Take care. See you in a bit.